Is Ashes of Creation solo friendly? A real solo play experience. Ashes of Creation's true potential. Alright, let's find out.
Welcome everyone to Amazon Corporate Studios classes for min-maxing the fun out of MMORPGs. Today's lesson is all about speed woodcutting, brought to you by everyone's favorite loser, Nerdy Mook Neckbeard Face, to demonstrate how to ruin the economy of an MMORPG and get you to quit as soon as possible.
Oh no, let's not quit. I hope we can stay. New world.
And it's literally just that simple. So, any questions? What about you there? Yeah, that's great, but...
What happened to his clothes?
Kind of ruin the game? Oh, well, I suppose, what was it?
Hold up. Is that freaking Steven on his... Okay, never mind, guys. I think that's freaking Steven. Why is he wearing Steven's face on his underwear? Wait. Huh? What?
What was it? Intrepid Studios, right? Isn't that some
That's
indie
the lead dev, by the way,
like
the leader of
might
Interpret
Amazon's
Studios,
developers.
Steven.
Why don't you show us what you can do, Sproutling? Well, sure, I mean...
Holy shit, that's Steven. Oh, here's an axe. Time to cut some wood, huh? Oh. He's so funny.
Hey, what up, boys? So, before we begin, you're probably wondering, why haven't you gotten rid of your Halloween decorations yet? And, well, the answer to that is simple. I'm lazy. Anyway,
Yes.
now that I've had time to absorb every nanosecond of the live stream 5 times...
You know, it's funny, I'm actually the same. Sometimes I decorate for something, be it a birthday or whatever, and I let stuff still stay there for at least 1 or 2 weeks after it's over, and then I finally decide to remove it. I guess we gamers are sometimes, not all of us are a bit slow with certain things, or lazy or whatever.
Over, we shall be diving deep into the gathering for this highly anticipated MMORPG. We'll be discussing the implications for solo players, the interesting progression plans, and, of course, some juicy feedback from me and you guys down in the comments below. But before we get into that, our patrons and I would love for you to grab yourself a
Copium.
Coca-Cola, because lately
Coca-Cola.
Ashes of Creation has been labeled as a game not for solo players. However, this simply isn't the case. The problem is that we have yet to see the solo side of this game be shown properly, but this is no longer. With the artisan systems finally being revealed, it's about time we fixed this little issue and discussed my favorite gameplay loop in an MMORPG. Picking flowers whilst watching my favorite slice of life anime. Now, with all that bollocks out of the way, let's begin, shall we? Now, before we begin, I obviously need to emphasize that Artisan gameplay isn't the only solo gameplay loop that will be available in Ashes of Creation. I am merely utilizing a little bit of hyperbole here to push a narrative. It is just difficult for me to talk about the solo side of the game, like questing, progression, and exploration, or fuck all about it. But now the first and arguably most important of the 3 Artisan skills have been revealed, I can
It's actually funny how it
start
disappears,
peddling
right?
that sweet solo gameplay copium to convince you that this game does indeed appeal to balding middle-aged dads who don't actually like socializing in their massively multiplayer online role-playing game.
And that's the thing. That's what we have a lot in a lot of MMOs these days, and that's one of the reasons, maybe also why Blizzard started changing WoW bit by bit from expansion to expansion, and made World of Warcraft even more solo friendly. Why Dungeon Finder was added. Why now we have PvP solo queue. What is actually a good thing. I actually like that we have in World of Warcraft now solo queue for PvP. I think it's good, but like we have more and more solo players get into MMOs. Some people are actually from RPG games, but there have not been any good super new RPG games that people are hyped about, or people have played too long Skyrim and The Witcher and they have cleared everything, or in Fallout, and they want to get into something like an RPG game, and what's close to an RPG game, that's an MMO, right? Because an MMO is an RPG game, but it has the multiplayer factor in it too. That's why it's called MMORPG, right? And the thing is about that, like if solo players try this, they usually are like, yeah, you have some solo players that can socialize. Like for example, I see myself as a solo and group person kind of hybrid, because I can turn on with a snap of a finger solo mode, and I have to play quite often solo because I'm a freaking night owl. I play so often at late night when people are already sleeping and stuff, and when I finally can farm certain things, or maybe like grind a character, and I play usually during this time solo. But sometimes in the afternoon or so, I feel like, hey, I want to do some trials or dungeons in MMOs, and then I turn on like my group mode, and I get on my guild, or I whisper my friends and be like, hey, want to group up? Let's do this dungeon together, let's PvP together. And then I can like socialize. But there are some players, and I actually have a few in my friends list, Elder Scrolls Online for example, that only play solo or with at maximum 1 or 2 others. And those solo players, they also need a home, right? And I feel like, especially if you're new to a game, it's not that easy to get into a famous guild or people that know how to play that you can play with for like more difficult endgame content. So if you're like a new player and the game is solo friendly, it will appeal more to you, and it's more likely you stay around because you have so much stuff in this game to do where you don't need to know someone. And I think that's a good thing. I think we need also solo experience in MMOs.
In their massively multiplayer online role-playing game.
But Narc,
This keeps newcomers engaged.
Ungroomed copium addict. I don't care about gathering or processing or crafting, so none of this actually applies to me.
And for that, I'd be forced to look down upon you again and feel disappointed that another theme park Andy has stumbled upon my videos because, Sand Park MMO functions much differently to what you're probably used to. So, if you're willing, allow me to part my knowledge onto you, my friend, and explain why the economic and artisan side of Ashes of Creation encourages and rewards solo players in ways that are currently popular,
Because you can get good gear,
MMOs
get rich by good stuff.
have forgotten. Economy is the lifeblood of an MMORPG. Without a solid economy, the game crashes and burns. Motivation runs dry as players have no meaningful way to generate cash to progress their characters or maintain their gear.
And it's also for endgame players. I know a lot of like veterans in World of Warcraft that have already done all this stuff. Same with like Elder Scrolls Online. You have this also with like other MMOs. You have this even with Final Fantasy XIV. So if you are like a super old school player, you are a super veteran, you have beaten all the content, you have like nothing to really achieve anymore. You like have no more goals, right? But if you have like a good trading system and a big market in a game, your goal could be to get richer, right? And then you will do certain dungeons or world bosses or something to get super rare items that sell for a big amount of cash in game, right? Like you can make so much gold in game. And this is also good for like older players because they still have a motivation to play the game, because maybe they, especially if a game has housing like Elder Scrolls Online, maybe they want to buy this one house that costs 3 million gold, or maybe a very rare mount that they missed from an event in World of Warcraft, right? So they can farm and grind for stuff for weeks or months until they have millions of gold, and then they can finally buy this house or mount or something. So like the end game players, the veterans that have beaten everything already or almost everything, they have something to come back for to the game because they know there's this super expensive thing that they can't afford yet, but if they use the market to get rich, they can afford it. I know several players like that. They are already even bought with the game. They don't even bother doing dungeons. They just do farming and selling stuff because they want to have this one expensive house or something or this one mount. And yeah, by the way, guys, if you're new to this channel, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more content. I can't wait for like more news. Like each time there's something leaked new about Ashes of Creation or interesting video, we are always coming back to check those out. And if you guys feel like we missed something important, any announcements or something of Ashes of Creation, or anything you guys want me to discuss, like feel free to leave in the comment section. We can get back to some of it and have a look and talk about this.
Their characters or maintain their gear. This is what happened at the launch of New World, as the geniuses at
People were
Amazon
farming
Corporate
like crazy.
Studios decided hiring an economic specialist was gonna affect their bottom line too much. You see, none of the corporate drones over at Amazon possessed the mental capacity to consider the impact on the marketplace when 2,000 players were speed gathering 10,000 wood,
it's too
stone,
easy.
and hide per hour. Surely duping was the real reason everything cost 0.01 gold in the first couple of days, right? Not the severe lack of material sinks or passive gold generation. No, I read on Reddit one time that some randos were duping, so...
They could have solved it easily. You need a few rare crafting items that drop only each, maybe an average 20-30 trees that you cut down. Like, it's good to have some rare materials that if you go to a node, it can be a herb, it can be some rock, some iron or some mineral, anything. And if you farm it, there's like a 1 or 2% chance you get some rare drop. And this is what actually sells on the market and you need it to craft something. I think that would be way better, and the economy, nothing would be too much and too cheap. You could just have like, maybe you can buy a stack of some certain item, but it costs like thousands of golds or something. I think they should have added some RNG thingy, 1-2% chance per node. And then people farm a lot to get this, and some are more lucky than others. That would make farming more interesting. We have something like that in Elder Scrolls Online, for example. They're like those resins, those like upgrade materials and stuff. I think that is really cool.
That must be the problem. A multi-billion-dollar company like Amazon would never make such stupid mistakes and choose profit over...
But they sure did make this mistake in New World.
Game, right? So now the emphasis on economy within an MMORPG has been set using the solo player mentality. Hopefully this allows you to understand the weight masses of individuals can have on a game's success. It's no secret that a large majority of MMO players enjoy playing solo, and I don't blame them. People are retarded after all, and as the average IQ
and
of
time
MMO
schedule
gamers
and you're
has
new.
declined since Blizzard slowly stripped us of our social freedom, the very thought of interacting with another consumer genuinely scares me. However, that doesn't mean we as individuals are not part of a social ecosystem that fuels the economy of a server. In fact, that is the beauty of a free market within an MMORPG, and one of the core reasons why I love to focus on artisan gameplay. Every time you make a monetary transaction through the crafting, gathering, and processing side of these games, it fuels the social gameplay that breathes life into the virtual worlds we're trying to spend thousands of hours in. Provided it's not New World, of course, because we all quit that game in a matter of days. But with Ashes of Creation basically using the same gathering mechanics that New World did, will this highly anticipated MMORPG face the same problems? Well, I already predicted they wouldn't back during my economic exploration of New World, and now the plans are officially revealed, I can safely back up my previous claims
That's good.
with solid evidence.
Like, it needs to be like that.
RPGs in the past that utilize exactly what was shown. So let's jump into that next. Progression is an interesting topic when it comes to MMORPGs. Depending on the context of the game, different types of progression affect gameplay in many different ways. With this month's livestream, we got a tease into Ashes of Creation's progression paths, and using this new information together with what we already know, we can pretty clearly tell how these mechanics will play out during the initial testing. First of all, let's talk about the most obvious difference Ashes Gathering has compared to our currently popular MMOs. The regrowth mechanic. For those of you unaware, when rocks, trees, flora, and game respawn in Ashes of Creation, it isn't after mere moments like your traditional MMOs. It takes a significant amount of time to respawn, and each of the resources have growth stages to them to indicate to the players how recently they've been harvested and how long they have left until harvestable again. Now, many of you may be thinking to yourself, damn, that's a pretty unique mechanic, and there's no way they can pull this off in an MMO.
One thing I think is funny, what if there's like a rare plant and you see that it starts to grow? Are actually players going to camp there and be like, oh, this is really rare, I need this. Oh, it's still a small plant. Let me just put my character there and I go AFK for 2-3 hours until it's regrown or something. Okay, it's not gonna be maybe 2 hours. I'm not sure how they're gonna make it. But I believe it's like maybe 30 minutes or even less than that for something to regrow. Because it would be stupid if it's like really hours. That would be weird. Because if you have like a lot of people playing there, then one person gets it and like a few others in one day. Like you need to have it at least at maybe maximum 20 minutes or less for it to regrow. Otherwise it's weird. Because what if many people play, right? Then you never have a chance. Everyone will just take it from you. But it is interesting, and one thing I like a lot about Gathering, we have seasons in Ashes of Creation. So I've heard already, and it was confirmed, that during certain seasons, there are certain ingredients for alchemy or something that only grow in, let's say, summer or spring season. There is some stuff you can only get in winter, like maybe there's like a snowflower or something, and I think that's really cool. That means you have to wait for a certain season to farm something. And this will be interesting for the market, because if you gather something during a season and you sell it out of season, like maybe let's say you get something in summer and you sell it in spring or so, it's going to have a way different value. It's going to be expensive.
And each of the resources have growth stages to them to indicate to the players how recently they've been harvested and how long they have left until harvestable again. Now,
His voice.
Now, many of you may be thinking to yourself, damn, that's a pretty unique mechanic, and there's no way they can pull this off in an MMORPG.
Yes, they can.
Right?
They did.
This seems
already
almost
out there.
impossible in an open world, let alone one that's seamless, dynamic, PvP focused, over 1.2 kilometers squared, player driven, social, and has no fast travel. It'll be fine. I'm sure it'll be fine. Well, actually, my friend, this isn't unique at all. This is exactly how resources work in Arcade, one of Ashes of Creation's main inspirations. And I was ecstatic to see that Intrepid have chosen to mimic this genius economic idea alongside New World's highly praised gathering mechanics. This alone is enough to prevent the
funny how this character's
material
walking,
flooding
right?
that we saw in New World, as it, 1, prevents players from gathering indefinitely, flooding the market with base materials from day one. 2, fuels a social economic environment, encouraging etiquette among the player base, both through competition or teamwork. And 3, rewards progression in ways that are meaningful and satisfying by allowing players to specialize down specific paths to gain access to resources other players cannot. So let's talk about the progression side of this now, something that sadly both New World and Arcade were lacking in very different ways. Sure, New World had vertical progression that allowed you to access new materials through hard-gated levels. However, this is a very shallow form of progression that doesn't allow you to specialize in anything, and everyone can eventually access
max out everything.
Not a great plan.
But on the opposite side of the spectrum, we have Arcade, focusing on a very open sandbox nature, purposefully allowing everyone to access everything, but slowly stacking up expertise through wood chopping over long periods of time. Or, alternatively, the main way to specialize was by wearing gear that boosted it by large amounts to reach certain
I like the gear idea.
These thresholds, however, were very
Or
minor
tools.
and hardly even worth mentioning, which is where Arcade failed its progression, in my opinion. I actually did a deep dive of the whole system during my Arcade series, where we looked at all the core systems, compared them to Ashes of Creation, and provided some feedback that Intrepid could use to improve the primitive mechanics in that much beloved, but sadly neglected, MMORPG.
So
let's
many
briefly talk
MMOs
about
failed,
Ashes of Creation
unfortunately.
now before providing our own feedback for what we saw during this month's livestream. Because Intrepid are aiming for a living, breathing ecology system layered with season-exclusive materials, it's fairly safe to say that the materials will remain scarce and in high demand, fueling economy and artisan gameplay in the correct ways, utilizing both vertical leveling skill trees and gear to boost your proficiency. In theory, as you progress, you'll gain easier access to trees, rock, and flora at earlier stages of their growth, and maybe even unlock entirely unique materials only after you progress and specialize beyond a certain point. Ashes of Creation has always been about social gameplay, and even though the
And one thing is also important, but I hope they can pull this off. So in MMOs, there's two types of gear you can get. The craftable ones and the ones in from a dungeon. And what you always need to be careful of when you make an MMO, you have to make it where the stuff you craft, at least a portion of it, is best in slot. Why the dungeon gear is at the same time best in slot. It's kind of like, let's say you can craft jewelry. And the jewelry you craft is best in slot, but the armor that is best in slot you only get from a dungeon, or vice versa. Like, let's say the gear that you craft is best in slot, but the best in slot jewelry you only get from a dungeon, or the weapon or something, or only the weapon that you craft is the best in slot. Like, there needs to be a portion of best in slot you get from crafting and a portion best in slot from a dungeon. If you don't have this kind of balance, then people are either going to completely skip dungeons or they're not gonna bother with crafting gear at all. And this is very unfortunate, because I think in World of Warcraft they failed a big time with this, with the crafting system. Because what can you really craft in World of Warcraft that's best in slot? You only go to like Mythic Plus dungeons, you do your freaking raids, and you get the best in slot gear from there. But from crafting, you don't have any best in slot gear really, right? Like the only thing is, yeah, your legendary that you can make. Wow, okay, but only that. But like, I think they could have done way better in World of Warcraft with the crafting. Like, maybe the best weapon in the game is only craftable or something. Like, yeah, I think you need to be very, very careful with that, because otherwise you're literally making crafting, or at least a portion of the things you can craft, completely useless.
It's always been about social gameplay, and
Needs
even
to
though
be
the
balanced.
Gathering is a very
Dungeon
solo
and craft, yeah,
gameplay
both
loop,
best
it's
in
the
slot.
economy itself that brings everyone together in a living, breathing, massively multiplayer world, and modern MMOs have completely forgotten that in favor of a more single-player curated experience. Now, I could talk about the surveying system they teased, however, today's video is getting fairly long and I genuinely want to give it proper time, and I think it's actually more of a solution to many concerns people have with Ashes of Creation's ecology. So, I will save my discussion about this for that upcoming video. For now though, let's jump into some feedback. Although what we saw this month was great quality, there were some fairly obvious aesthetic problems on display that should be a fairly easy fix. Their physics-based collision mechanics were a great start, however, I don't think anyone is claiming it's perfect in its current form. The branches looked rubbery and unrealistic, but this is mere teething problems that I'm confident Intrepid can fix after a few quality passes. Additionally, the actual cut of the tree itself was fairly clean, considering that we're using a simple felling axe to decapitate these helpless trees. I'd much prefer to see a very rough cut indicative of actual real-life lumberjack work rather than a clean slice. Additionally, in aid of fueling the social and competitive gameplay of Ashes of Creation's Gathering loop, I'm hoping one of the respawn phases of these trees is actually just the stump itself. Instead of the whole tree despawning after it's felled, I'd rather the stump remain for a significant amount
and look
of
at
time,
the cut.
so players have a clear indication that others have recently been in the area.
Yeah,
if
some
we're
roots
aiming for
on
a social, living, breathing world here, indications of recent player activity is very important, and this should be clear for rocks, flora, and game as well.
I have a good suggestion here. What do you guys think about that? So if this stem is still here, like the cut tree, how about like a little sprout comes from there? Like a part of it stays and like a little sprout appears, and you know, oh, on this tree a new one will regrow in some time. Can't they do something like that? Like that it's getting cut down, it stays like that? So Steven, if you're watching this, that's a good idea, right? Like the tree's cut and then suddenly a sprout appears on the stem. Like what is left? The trunk. So there's the trunk and then on the trunk a sprout comes. Wow, that would be so cool.
Indications of recent player activity is very important, and this should be clear for rocks, flora, and game as well. Finally, the last piece of feedback I have is the sound design. I do think the sound effects they have are very good quality and most certainly match New World. However, it wasn't the sound effects themselves that made it so special.
Oh, I love the sounds in New World. Like you hear it from very far.
Utilized a long-distance echo that we've never seen before in an MMORPG. This
is actually what freaked me out when I was new to New World. And I was just starting to play it. I would hear freaking trees fall near to me somewhere, and I didn't even see a player. And it would freak me out because I was like, "What the heck is this sound? Is some thingy attacking me? So like maybe a huge bear chasing me or something." Is this a bear? What is going on? Like, it freaked me out each time. As I hear this loud sound, or when someone was like mining. I thought maybe there's like a bandit camp or something there.
This was
I mean, there are not really bandits, but those corrupted things,
but
right?
also the combat as well, to breathe life into a seemingly empty area, using the general gathering and gameplay sound effects to let others know there are people nearby. It's this particular part of New World that is praised, not so much the sound effects themselves. Sharper, louder impacts upon the rocks and trees echoing throughout the zone is what I want to see be implemented into Ashes of Creation. And although this may already be the case, it is currently impossible to tell when the showcases are just a single man in an empty testing environment. With that said, I will conclude today's video with a question for you, my dear viewer. Were you pleased with this month's showcase? Is there any feedback you guys have that you want to express to Intrepid after
I like the new combat.
I personally think the showcase was a great start, but a start it was indeed. Very solid foundations, but still a fairly long way to go, not only for the core mechanics, but for allowing it to work in a seamless open world. But as usual, I am just one nerd desperate for a good MMO, and my opinions mean nothing without yours in the comments below. And hey, things are starting to smooth back out in my real life now, so the upload schedule should be back to normal by the end of this month.
That's great.
A jam-packed upload schedule for you guys now that the Patreon stuff is sorted. This includes a bunch of memes, epic intros, and some of that sweet copium-filled content. So I'm looking forward to getting back on track, and I'll see you in the next one.
But Narc, this was nothing special. It's terrible and smells of a gankfest. Pantheon is the true savior of MMOs, not this failure.
And to that I say, listen kid, literally everyone forgot Pantheon even existed, and if you still think Visionary Realms are even bothering to make a game, then Jopper called. He needs to purchase a new Unity pack to scam you all with, because you're high on copium.
That's really good. But yeah, I'm also the opinion that, like, with markets, this is the issue. Like, any gathering you do, like, there needs to be a limited amount of stuff you can get in a zone and on a limited amount of time. Because if it's like constantly respawning, like in New World, and people are constantly cutting stuff down and you get like thousands of materials instead of just a few hundreds, like the prices are going to be crap. Like, it's just a few gold coins get you like a whole stack of this material, and you can infinitely like, you can craft as much as you want, and then the items also become super cheap. So it's like a chain reaction, and a very bad one for the market. But yeah, about solo gameplay in MMOs, I think it is more important now than ever, because we have like a lot of people these days, and I see this every day in World of Warcraft, I see this in Elder Scrolls Online, I've seen this with New World quite a lot. Like, we have people that come from other genres, including shooting games, including RPG games like Skyrim, Diablo, The Witcher, for example, Fallout. So it's very, very important to attract as many players as you can into the MMO genre, because the MMO genre right now isn't the biggest gaming genre. Like, you have games that are way more popular than, like, from other genres, especially shooting games, than MMO games. Like, true, right now World of Warcraft is doing really good on Twitch. New World has a comeback with the good changes that happened, and I still think MMOs could do in general way better. And yeah, give more solo players a chance too, especially those that come to a game and have no friends. If they feel at home without friends in a game, they will return, and then they will hopefully make friends in time, and then they can do some cool dungeons and group PvP, what is also really fun. But yeah, it's good fun. It's very new player friendly if you have a solo chance. So what do you guys think about Ashes of Creation so far? I think it's looking really good. Like, this year we saw some really cool combat changes. I find the new races very interesting. The seasons completely freaked me out when I saw the reveal to the seasons and how we're gonna get unique resources based on season and stuff, including mobs. That was also announced. It's really good. Really looking forward to Ashes of Creations. And yeah, if you guys are new to this channel, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more content. And if you guys enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give this one a thumbs up. I wish everyone a wonderful day. I will see you guys in the next video.